Star Wars is a multi-billion-dollar franchise, so it may have come as a surprise to many people when Squadrons was announced. Priced lower than a standard AAA game, it's a flying game with no microtransactions and little marketing. Not something we see often in today's market, and certainly not something we see often from EA. But how does it handle its niche genre? What about aspects such as story, multiplayer, and design? Since launch, I've been dogfighting, bombing, and evading my way through the game's single player and multiplayer experiences, and it's certainly a game I won't be uninstalling anytime soon. I want to make a couple of things clear before I get into the details of this review. I've never played a flying game before, I don't own a VR headset, and I'm not a die-hard Star Wars fan. So if you clicked on this review looking for VR info, I can't help you unfortunately, but from what I've heard, the experience is very good. As I mentioned, this is my first flying game, and it admittedly did take a few missions to get accustomed to the controls and feel of the aircraft I was piloting. I'm glad to report that the mechanics here are excellent. Every ship felt completely different and had their own characteristics, which depending on the mission can be customized in the hangar. Before each mission you are debriefed, and whilst this is important for the story, it's also crucial for picking the right aircraft for the job. I picked an A-wing for one mission, but soon realised that it was the wrong choice as I had to take down a destroyer. I switched to a bomber, and the difference was instantly notable. Flying is tremendous fun, and this is partly down to the controls. I mentioned how good they feel, but the actual layout and options are also great. Each ship has various options to prioritize weapons, engines, and even shields. Some can devote all their energy towards a certain aspect, and others can do so regarding the placement of their shields. Taking into account the different weapons you can arm yourself with and abilities, and you truly play Squadrons like a pilot. I constantly found myself entering a dogfight before having to escape, and I was subconsciously flicking different options around on my controller, like an actual pilot. It's surreal to experience, and it's so much more than move, aim, and shoot. Squadron's single player spans across a prologue and 14 different missions, and whilst I'll talk about the story soon, the design of these missions is very impressive, especially for a flying game. Excluding the variety in ships and their components, each setting you fight in is unique and beautiful to fly around. Not only that, Squadrons also has you engaging in different types of combat, such as simple dogfights, defensive sections, and bombing runs. The AI are decent to battle with too, though on one occasion I did have to turn the difficulty down. Surprisingly, your squad is better than you might think at assisting you, and you are constantly following their lead and listening to their instructions. I'm about to talk about some story stuff, and this may include some minor spoilers. If you'd rather go in completely blind, then I recommend skipping ahead. Squadrons presents you with two unnamed playable characters, one for the Republic and one for the Empire. And instantly I have an issue with the latter. I've seen so many people talk about the need for a true Empire focused campaign in a Star Wars game, and I don't believe this is a good idea. Don't get me wrong, so many of the heroes in the media we consume are actually very bad people. A great example is something like GTA. However, whilst we acknowledge that these characters are terrible people, they're not pitched that way, and if anything, the antagonists are pitched as even worse people. From a gaming perspective, it always feels like we are doing the right thing when we play as the protagonist. However, with regards to Star Wars and the Empire, there's no grey area like in other media. It's black and white. The Empire are bad people, and I don't understand the allure of playing as a bad character, especially when the enemy is the Republic. No matter what way you spin them, It's hard to convince the player that the Republic is the enemy, especially when you play as a Republican pilot in the next mission. And that's my biggest problem with Squadrons. Half of the story is played through the eyes of an Imperial pilot, and it's completely unnecessary and feels disconnected from any sort of message the game is trying to convey. When a fellow member of the Empire says, "Rebel scum," I can't passionately take that on board like the other Imperial pilots would, because I'm that rebel scum. I've seen Star Wars movies and I'd rather be on their side. It admittedly doesn't help that your Republic squad are far more likable than your Imperial squad. The plot itself is based around Project Starhawk, a mammoth-sized ship the Republic are building that will hopefully bring an end to the Empire. There's also a focus on an Imperial defector and his squadmate who rises to a higher power within the Empire and is hunting him down as revenge. If you're going to be replaying Squadrons, it won't be for the story. There aren't any gaping holes in the plot or the characters, but it never takes it to any sort of interesting level, and the stakes and tension always seem to be manageable. It became increasingly frustrating to play towards the end of the campaign because it felt like 3 or 4 missions could have been the last mission. In short, the plot unnecessarily dragged on. Overall, it wasn't a terrible experience, but it certainly was a story that I quickly forgot about after I completed it. Squadrons multiplayer consists of 2 distinct modes. Dogfight is 5v5 and quite self-explanatory, and fleet battles, which are battles between opposing fleets of ships, are split into AI and non-AI. Both take the enjoyable controls and mechanics of flying into an online environment. I have a preference for ships such as the TIE Fighter and A-Wing, so Dogfight was really down my alley. It's even more enjoyable than fighting the AI, and sometimes it'll take you up to 30 seconds to finally kill someone. Maintaining accuracy along with weaving between debris and keeping your weapons primed is a very unique and engaging experience, one that I seemingly haven't had before. I had no issues regarding balancing or spawning, and although the maps are mostly ripped from the campaign, it's not a huge issue because they're mostly just empty space. Fleet battles also provide similar enjoyment, but they're far more tactical. They play out slower than a typical dogfight, so if you like that sort of thing, then it's probably the game mode for you. But it wasn't my cup of tea. Star Wars Squadrons is a well-made niche title. What it lacks in presentation and emotion, it makes up with excellent gameplay and controls. This isn't a game that will sell millions of copies or shake up the industry, but it's one that I know so many people will still love. I'm not a fan of the flying genre, and my love for Star Wars has diminished a bit over the years, but I recognise the place that this game has in the market, and more importantly, it recognises that too. We need more games like this, more games that just try to be themselves and not a carbon copy of something else. This is a title that fans of it will definitely be playing in years to come, and it's certainly one that will foster a devoted and passionate community. If you like any aspect of flying or Star Wars, seriously consider picking this up, especially at its lower price. As ever, if there are any upcoming games you'd also like me to review, please let me know.